I didn't leave the music. I just couldn't survive the pain anymore. A spotlight hits an empty stage, no band. No mic. No voice. Just the ghost of the man who vanished for 20 years. Cut to a grainy photo of Steve Perry hiking in Hawaii. Moments before the hip injury that ended everything. Then a blurred shot of the woman who pulled him back into life before cancer took her away. If one secret shaped his rise, and one loss nearly erased him, what pain was Steve Perry hiding all this time? Steve Perry's life was more painful than anyone realized. The pivot hits in 1957, when 8-year-old Stephen Ray Perry watches his family collapse in real time. His father, Raymond Perry, a singer he adored, walks out after the marriage breaks, leaving Steve and his mother to move into his grandparents' farmhouse in Lemoore, California. Biographers confirm the split. What they don't capture is the emotional crater it leaves behind. The new house is quiet in ways a child shouldn't understand. His mother works late. Doors stay closed. Nights feel long. Perry later says the silence was so heavy, it felt alive. This is the moment he learns that love can disappear overnight. In interviews decades later, Perry reveals something even darker, an unnamed childhood trauma, something I still can't talk about that had nothing to do with his parents, but changed him permanently. Fans have spent years building speculation-labeled theories online, but Perry refuses to explain, allowing only one truth: I got to sing it out instead. Out of that silence, his voice appears, not as a dream, not as ambition, but as survival. By age 12, he sings in school groups and marching bands, using music as the only outlet he has to push against abandonment. Press profiles would later romanticize this era as the birth of a legend. But the real story is simpler and far more painful. Steve Perry didn't start singing to become famous. He started singing because it was the only thing in his life that didn't leave. The pivot arrives in 1977, when Steve Perry officially joins Journey and changes the band's trajectory overnight. The press calls him the new golden voice, and the label sees dollar signs. What fans don't see is the immediate pressure radio demands, touring expectations, and the weight of transforming a struggling prog rock band into an American arena machine. By 1981, Escape explodes into a global hit, Don't Stop Believin'. Who's Crying Now? Open Arms and Journey becomes one of the biggest bands in the country. But behind the scenes, Perry is cracking. Critics label the band too commercial. Music magazines attack him personally. And some rock purists frame him as the one who softened Journey speculation-labeled narratives that follow him for decades. The touring schedule is brutal. Some years approach 250, 300 days on the road. And Perry, already carrying unresolved childhood abandonment, begins living in two worlds, adored loudly by millions and dying quietly inside hotel rooms. He later admits that success didn't feel like it looked, a confession that exposes how deeply the pressure hit him. Then the emotional blow arrives in the mid-1980 seconds. During the recording of Raised on Radio 1986, Perry's mother becomes seriously ill. He keeps leaving the studio, flying home, returning exhausted, and emotional whiplash documented in band histories and press retrospectives. The tension bleeds into the sessions. Arguments rise. Schedule slip. The band fractures under the strain of a man trying to hold two worlds together. By 1987, Journey announces a hiatus. No scandal, no tabloid spark, just a silent collapse, masked as creative exhaustion. It's the first time fame forces Perry to choose between the world he sings for and the woman who raised him after his father left. And as he walks away from the band, the pattern becomes clearer. Steve Perry rises higher than ever before, but every ascent drags a new emotional cost behind it. This isn't the beginning of his downfall. It's the beginning of a truth he won't understand until much later. Even the greatest voice in rock is not strong enough to outrun the wounds of its past. The pivot strikes in 1996, just when the world believes Journey is finally whole again. After nearly a decade of silence, the band reunites for Trial by Fire, and press headlines explode. Journey reborn. Perry returns. The voice is back. The album climbs the charts. A world tour is planned. Fans think this is the comeback of the century. But behind that triumphant facade, Perry is hiding pain he doesn't fully understand. During a hiking trip in Hawaii, he suffers a severe hip injury, later diagnosed as a degenerative bone condition that makes standing, walking, even breathing under stage lights excruciating. Medical reports confirm he needs hip replacement surgery before any tour can happen. While Perry delays surgery fearful, unready, already worn down by decades of emotional and physical strain, the rest of Journey grows impatient. They want to tour. Management wants revenue. Contracts are waiting. And by late 1997, guitarist Neil Schon and keyboardist Jonathan Cain issue the now infamous ultimatum: get the surgery immediately, or Journey moves on without you. This is the fracture the public never understood. Press outlets frame it as Perry quits Journey. Tabloids twist it into rumor-labeled narratives about ego, laziness, and control issues. Fans fight online over whether the band betrayed him or whether he abandoned them. The truth is colder and simpler than all of it. Perry wasn't refusing to sing. He was physically unable to stand on a stage. The ultimatum hits him like the echo of his childhood. Another family threatening to leave if he can't keep up. Another place he thought he belonged, suddenly closing its doors. By 1998, Perry steps back from the band. Not with anger, but with the quiet resignation of someone who has already lost too much. Journey moves forward with Steve O'Gary, and later Arnel Pineda, while Perry retreats into a private world of silence and physical recovery. For the world, this is the moment the great Steve Perry disappears. For him, it feels like the final confirmation of a pattern that has haunted him since he was 8 years old. Every time he gives his heart to something, life finds a way to take it from him. The silence begins in 1998. Not with a press conference, not with a scandal, but with Steve Perry quietly stepping out of the spotlight after the ultimatum that ended his Journey era. No farewell tour, no formal goodbye, just absence. As the band moves forward with a new singer, the media crafts its own narrative. Perry abandons Journey. The voice walks away. Headlines that reduce a decade of pain, injury, and pressure into a simplistic exit story. None of them capture what's actually happening. In reality, Perry is emotionally and physically shattered. The hip injury leaves him hesitant to undergo major surgery. The reunion tension drains him, and years of non-stop touring, criticism, and internal conflict finally crash down. What the public labels a disappearance is, in truth, a man trying to survive the weight of everything he's lost: his father, his mother, his home life, and now the only musical family he ever believed in. Rumors fill the void instantly. Fan forums speculate, rumor labeled, that Perry lost his voice, that he was too fragile for the industry, that he hates Journey, or, more cruelly, that he simply didn't care anymore. None of these claims are confirmed. In interviews years later, Perry clarifies the truth. He wasn't hiding out of ego. He was hiding because he felt broken. The early 2000s pass, with only rare sightings: an autograph here, a baseball game there feeding tabloid whispers about whether he will ever sing again. Industry insiders describe him as the Great Vanish, a legend frozen in time. Yet the emotional undercurrent is quieter. Perry is grieving not only the end of Journey, but the collapse of an identity he spent decades building. For nearly 20 years, the world waits for him to return. But Perry is not waiting. He is recovering, mourning, and rebuilding a heart that has been cracked since childhood and shattered again in 1998. This is the long, painful silence that fans misunderstood. Steve Perry didn't disappear because he wanted to leave the world. He disappeared because the world kept taking pieces of him he could not replace. The pivot arrives in 2011. Long after the world assumes Steve Perry is gone for good. He says Kelly Nash, a psychologist and cancer survivor. In a TV documentary produced by Patty Jenkins, something about her presence calm, luminous, quietly strong cuts through 2 decades of emotional armor. Perry asks Jenkins for her email. A message is sent, a connection forms, and for the first time since the Journey fallout, Perry feels something he hasn't felt in years: hope. Their relationship grows quickly but gently. Kelly knows pain. Perry knows loss. Together, they build a small world where neither has to pretend. Interviews and statements confirm that she was the one who encouraged him to rejoin life movies, long drives, late-night talks. She even tells him he should sing again. For a man who spent 20 years trying to disappear, this is the closest thing to resurrection. Then the tragedy hits. Kelly's cancer returns, a real, confirmed recurrence. Aggressive and unforgiving. Perry stays by her side through every appointment, every test. Every moment hope slips further away. Tabloids later spin speculation-labeled stories about Perry finally breaking, but the truth is worse than anything they imagine. In December 2012, Kelly Nash dies, and with her goes the last piece of Perry's ability to pretend he's okay. He withdraws again. But this time, the silence is different. Not the quiet of burnout. Not the quiet of a band's betrayal. This silence is grief at its rawest, an open wound where his voice, identity, and future should be. He says in a later interview that losing Kelly changed everything. Admitting the pain was so deep, he stopped listening to music because it hurt too much. But before she dies, Kelly makes him promise something: not to hide from the world anymore, not to disappear again, not to let grief destroy him the way abandonment, injury, and loss have done his entire life. It takes him 6 more years to fulfill that promise. But in 2018, when he releases Traces, Steve Perry confirms what fans never knew. His comeback wasn't a career strategy. It was a love letter to the woman who believed he still had something left to give. Kelly Nash didn't just break him. She rebuilt him and then left him with the impossible task of learning to live again. The pivot hits in October 2018. When Steve Perry releases Traces, his first studio album in nearly 24 years, a return so unexpected that music outlets treat it like a miracle. Rolling Stone, Billboard, and NPR headline the same shock: the voice returns. But behind the triumphant framing is a quieter truth. Perry repeats in every interview he did not come back for fame, nostalgia, or pressure. He came back because Kelly Nash asked him to, but the emotional arc is brutal. For years after Kelly's death, Perry says he couldn't listen to music at all. It was too painful, too loud, too close to everything he had lost. When he finally steps back into a studio, he describes the moment as terrifying as if opening his mouth might reopen wounds. He spent 2 decades cauterizing. Recording Traces is not a technical process. It's grief therapy. Perry rewrites lyrics 3, 4, 5 times, he sits alone in dark control rooms. Replaying takes that sound too fragile, too broken, too honest. Producers later confirm he needed long pauses not for vocal strain, but for emotional ones. This was a man trying to sing through the ghost of someone he loved. The media spin varies widely. Some critics frame the comeback as a victory lap. Some tabloids push speculation-labeled narratives that Perry returned to reclaim relevance from Journey's success with Arnel Pineda. But Perry shuts all of it down. He says plainly, "I made this record for her." What makes Traces powerful is not just the return of his voice. It's the sound of someone who survived grief instead of outrunning it. Songs like No Erasing, Most of All, and No More Cryin' are built from the ruins of decades of silence. Listeners hear the age in his tone. The cracks, the softness, but the emotion is so sharp it cuts deeper than anything he recorded in the 80 seconds. And when the album debuts in the top 10, Steve Perry doesn't celebrate like a man reclaiming his throne. He speaks like someone finally keeping a promise to the only person who ever asked him for nothing in return. His voice returned not because the world wanted it, but because grief demanded it. And after 20 years of disappearing, Steve Perry rose again, the only way he knows how, singing through the pain that once took everything from him. By 75, the noise around Steve Perry has faded, leaving only the truth he avoided for most of his life. After decades of runaway fame, abandoned stages, lost love, and long silences, he finally begins speaking openly about what it cost him to be the voice. In interviews from 2018 onward, his tone is softer, not defensive, not nostalgic, just honest. He admits the pressure nearly broke him. He admits the injury devastated him. He admits he disappeared because he couldn't breathe inside the machine he helped build. What surprises fans most is how clear-eyed he is about his legacy. He doesn't chase a reunion. He doesn't chase charts. He doesn't chase old glory. Instead, he talks about gratitude, grief, and the strange gift of surviving long enough to see the world return to his music on its own terms. And as Journey continues touring with Arnel Pineda, whom Perry publicly praises with genuine respect, he finally lets go of the bitterness that once surrounded their split. There's no feud now, just distance and acceptance. Perry knows the story has moved on. And for the first time, he seems at peace with that. But beneath the calm, there's a quiet ache he no longer bothers to hide. He says he still misses Kelly. He still misses his parents. He still feels the echo of his childhood silence. Even though he lives with the truth that shaped his entire life. Love built him. Music saved him. And loss followed him everywhere. Yet this time, the silence doesn't swallow him. He appears at baseball games again. He smiles more. He sings carefully, sparingly, but with a warmth he never had in his youth. And when fans tell him he changed their lives, he finally believes them a little. At 75, Steve Perry's legacy is no longer defined by the years he vanished. It's defined by the courage it took to come back, the honesty he carries now, and the voice that survived every wound life tried to bury. For a man who spent decades running from the world, his greatest triumph is simple. He stayed long enough to learn that he didn't have to run anymore.